你有无数机会可以动手。
我们做个交易。
这一路何必等到现在？
老爷，最近京城里闹鬼，
可不请我进去坐坐？你房里有其他人？
许多达官贵人家里都。
Hello everyone, welcome back to Donghua Nexus. I hope you're all doing well wherever you are right now. In this video, we're going to discuss spoilers for the Donghua Tales of Herding Gods, episode 68. Before jumping into the latest episode, let's briefly review what happened previously so the story feels more complete. In the previous episode, the Thunder Club sect, together with Old Rulai, intervened to stop the intense battle between the Grand Master and the high-ranking leaders of the rebel sect. Old Rulai proposed an unexpected solution. Instead of continuing the bloodshed and political conflict, he invited the rebel leaders to abandon worldly struggles and turn toward Zen teachings. In the end, the Grand Master accepted this proposal, not because the conflict was resolved ideologically, but because he understood that his body, already covered in serious wounds, could not sustain the battle any longer. As a result, the fight was halted, and the rebel leaders were taken away under the supervision of the Thunder Club sect. After this incident, Old Relay discovered a crucial truth. The new leader of the Tian Mo sect was none other than Qin Mu. This revelation immediately hinted at future trouble. The Thunder Club sect and the Tian Mo sect have always stood on opposing paths. One is considered to walk the so-called righteous or bright path, while the other is labeled as dark or heretical. Naturally, conflict between these two sects seems unavoidable. At the same time, the masked man from the Imperial Ling family made a shocking decision. He chose to end his own life, refusing to be taken by the Grand Master to the Yanka Empire. From his perspective, his existence alone could have triggered serious political turmoil. His sacrifice was not impulsive. It was a calculated decision to prevent greater chaos. After all of that, Qin Mu and his companions began their journey back to the Yanka Empire, which marked the conclusion of the previous storyline. Now, let's move on to the latest episode. The story continues with Qin Mu, the Grand Master, and their accompanying forces finally arriving at the imperial capital of Yanka. However, instead of a triumphant welcome, they are met with an atmosphere of deep mourning. The entire empire is grieving the death of a royal family member, King Ling Yinfeng. King Yinfeng was the younger brother of the former emperor, making him the uncle of the current emperor Yanfeng. His contributions to the Yanka Empire were enormous. He conquered numerous nations, saved Emperor Yanfeng's father multiple times, and ultimately played a decisive role in placing Emperor Yanfeng on the throne. What makes this tragedy even more painful is the hidden truth. King Yinfeng was the masked man from the rebel faction, the very man who chose self-sacrifice earlier. The Grand Master later admits that he had already known the truth behind the mask. However, out of deep respect for Yinfeng as a brother emperor, a noble uncle, and a pillar of the empire, he chose to remain silent. Yinfeng was not only a royal figure, but also an unparalleled strategic genius.
Looking back, this explains everything. The masked man's ability to manipulate events, divide forces, and unite rebel sect members against the Grand Master was no coincidence. Only someone with Yinfeng's intelligence and experience could orchestrate strategies on such a massive scale. From a personal perspective, this episode highlights one of the strongest themes in Tales of Herding Gods, the tragedy of duty versus identity.
King Yin Feng was never purely a rebel nor purely a royal. He existed in the gray area between loyalty to the empire and his own convictions. His death was not framed as heroism or villainy, but as inevitability. And in my opinion, that's what makes his character so compelling. Rather than forcing a dramatic confrontation, the story chose quiet sacrifice, leaving behind emotional weight instead of spectacle. This kind of storytelling is exactly why Tales of Herding Gods stands out among other Donghua series. All of this further confirms one thing: Yin Feng was a top-tier strategist. At this point, Qin Mu asks an important question. Why did Emperor Yin Feng choose the path of rebellion in the first place? The Grand Master explains that, in truth, Yin Feng never intended to rebel against the imperial family itself. As a member of the Ling imperial clan, Yin Feng felt deeply threatened by the Grand Master's overwhelming presence and influence. The Grand Master had become far too dominant, both in strength and reputation. Yin Feng feared that one day the Grand Master might seize control of the empire and replace Emperor Yan Feng as the new ruler. Ironically, the Grand Master had never harbored such intentions. However, Yin Feng's constant overthinking and suspicion led him down a dark path. His excessive caution, combined with deep-rooted distrust, eventually pushed him into rebellion, not because of ambition, but because of fear. The Grand Master does not fully blame Yin Feng for this tragedy. Instead, he acknowledges Yin Feng's position and inner conflict. Out of respect, the Grand Master also confirms that he will still attend Yin Feng's funeral ceremony. After that, the Grand Master returns to his residence, only to be met with an eerie silence. There are no guards in sight. Sensing something is wrong, the Grand Master enters his residence and is immediately shocked. The place has been breached by outsiders. The guards, along with Fu Yuanning, have all been restrained and their cultivation has been sealed, leaving them completely powerless. The Grand Master quickly frees them and restores their cultivation, then demands an explanation. Unfortunately, the guards cannot give a clear answer. Everything happened too fast. One moment they were standing watch, and the next they were already captured. The only thing they recall is a sudden flash of movement, incredibly fast, so fast that they couldn't even identify its source. That single burst of motion was enough to subdue everyone. The Grand Master then checks his treasury room. And there it is. Everything is gone. All of his stored wealth has been stolen. Worse still, the thief leaves behind a message. The message states that the thief has reclaimed his leg and taken all of the Grand Master's possessions as compensation. From this message, the identity of the thief becomes obvious. It is Pan Li, also known as the One-Legged Uncle. The same Pan Li who once humiliated the Grand Master by urinating all over his residence, filling the entire place with an unbearable stench. Enraged and embarrassed, the Grand Master immediately orders his subordinates to clean the residence thoroughly. But beneath the anger lies a more serious problem. The Grand Master urgently needs funds for this month's expenses and for preparing gifts. To make matters worse, his salary has not yet been paid. For the first time in a long while, he finds himself genuinely troubled by money. He begins to think of possible solutions. Eventually, he comes up with an idea: borrowing money from Qin Mu. Due to his strong sense of pride, the Grand Master refuses to appear desperate in front of other noble families. However, when it comes to Qin Mu, he feels no such hesitation. Qin is kind, humble, and trustworthy, and most importantly, not someone who would spread rumors. Borrowing money from Qin would not damage the Grand Master's dignity. What makes this moment even more telling is the unspoken truth. With his status, the Grand Master could easily obtain money through corruption or abuse of power, yet he refuses to do so. He lives by a firm principle: never take what does not belong to him. This also explains why, despite being a high-ranking official, the Grand Master is surprisingly poor when it comes to personal wealth. Personally, I think this part of the story does a great job humanizing the Grand Master. He isn't just a powerful figure standing above everyone else. He struggles, worries about expenses, and even has to consider borrowing money like an ordinary person. It's rare to see a character with immense authority who still refuses to compromise his moral boundaries. In a world full of schemes and power struggles, his integrity becomes his defining weakness, and at the same time, his greatest strength. This contrast is what makes Tales of Hurting Gods feel grounded despite its grand scale. Meanwhile, over at Qin residence, he suddenly senses something unusual. A strong medicinal aroma lingers in the air, far too rich to be natural. Instantly, Qin realizes that someone else has entered his residence. Without hesitation, he orders Hullinger and the Keelin dragon to stand guard and secure the area. Soon enough, the unexpected guests reveal themselves. It is Uncle Ma and Uncle Li, each carrying his severed limb. Uncle Li brings his missing leg, while Uncle Ma carries his lost arm. At this moment, everything becomes clear. The one who stole from the Grand Master's residence was indeed Uncle Li, who reclaimed his own leg in the process. Surprisingly, the reunion between Qin, Uncle Li, and Uncle Ma is not tense at all. Instead, it is filled with warmth and lighthearted banter. Their real purpose for coming to Qin is simple. They want to ask whether Uncle Li's leg and Uncle Ma's arm can still be reattached. However, rather than rushing straight into medical matters, the conversation drifts naturally toward memories of the past. Uncle Ma begins recalling stories from Qin childhood. When Qin was still very young, he often wet the bed and cried non-stop, driving Grandmother C to the brink of frustration. At one point, she even considered sending Qin away to another village. Yet, no matter how many times Qin was sent away, he would mysteriously find his way back to their village. The truth is finally revealed. It was Uncle Li who secretly brought Qin back every single time. This explains why Uncle Li, despite his carefree and joking demeanor, shares the deepest emotional bond with Qin. On the surface, Uncle Li never seems serious, always laughing and fooling around, but in reality, he was the one who cared the most. Learning this for the first time, Qin feels a sense of guilt. He realizes that as a child, he caused endless trouble for his uncles and elders. However, it is also explained that this was part of a natural transition from indifference to attachment. What began as annoyance slowly turned into a genuine emotional bond, strong enough that they willingly endured hardship to raise Qin. And now that troublesome child has grown into a young man. After the emotional reunion, Qin finally examines Uncle Li's leg and Uncle Ma's arm. His conclusion is clear. Both limbs can still be reattached. However, the recovery process will take longer than it did in Grandfather II's case. The difference lies in the circumstances. Although Grandfather Tu's body had once been separated, it was later used by another individual, the Golden Rosslin sect leader, which allowed blood circulation and vitality to remain active. In contrast, Uncle Lee's leg and Uncle Ma's arm were never connected to another body. Without blood flow or energy circulation, the limbs must first be carefully prepared and revitalized. Jin Mu estimates that it will take at least 10 to 15 days of preparation before the reattachment can safely proceed. Personally, I find this segment surprisingly touching. Beneath the cultivation techniques and political struggles, this episode quietly reminds us that Tales of Herding Gods is also a story about family, found family to be precise. Uncle Lee's actions perfectly capture that idea. He never needed recognition, never asked for gratitude. He simply brought Kin Mu back home again and again, because that's where he believed Kin Mu belonged. Sometimes the loudest love is hidden behind jokes and silence. However, in the middle of this warm reunion, Cheng Mu receives an urgent report from Hulinger and the Qilin dragon. They inform him that a guest from the Grand Master has arrived outside his residence. Hearing this, Chen Mu instantly panics. He fears that the Grand Master may have already discovered Uncle Lee's theft and followed the trail straight to his home. Without wasting a second, Qin Mu quickly hides Uncle Lee and Uncle Ma, then steps outside to personally meet the Grand Master. As soon as Qin Mu sees him, he notices something unusual. The Grand Master's demeanor is different, his posture stiff, his expression awkward, and his face clearly holding back embarrassment. After a brief pause, the Grand Master finally speaks. In an unusually humble tone, he says that in order to maintain good relations, he would like to borrow 100 gold coins. He then explains his unfortunate situation. His residence has been robbed, and he urgently needs money to prepare gifts for Emperor Yin Feng's funeral ceremony. This revelation leaves Chen Mu genuinely sympathetic. Despite being a high-ranking noble official, the Grand Master is living in near poverty. Without hesitation, Chen Mu lends him 1,000 gold coins, far more than the amount requested. Jin Mu also offers some heartfelt advice. He acknowledges the Grand Master's noble character, but suggests that living virtuously does not require living in hardship. In truth, the Grand Master has more than enough ability to live comfortably, or even become wealthy. The Grand Master understands this well. However, he has always rejected material abundance, choosing instead to keep his heart free from worldly attachments. Just as the conversation seems to be ending, the Grand Master suddenly senses something. Within Qin Mu's residence, he detects two powerful presences, one unmistakably belonging to Roulet, and another whose identity he cannot discern. Qin Mu cannot explain the situation. Fortunately, the Grand Master respects Qin Mu's privacy. Without pressing further, he politely takes his leave. After the Grand Master departs, Qin Mu returns inside, and his calm immediately gives way to anger. He scolds his uncles for making the Grand Master's life even more difficult through their actions. Uncle Lee quickly explains that he did not steal much at all. In fact, there was barely any money in the Grand Master's residence. The most valuable item there was actually a painting by Uncle Mute, carefully preserved by the Grand Master out of admiration. This confirms an uncomfortable truth. The Grand Master really is poor. Rather than lowering Qin Mu's opinion of him, this revelation only deepens Qin Mu's admiration. A man of such high status, yet completely untouched by corruption. Uncle Lee then hands the painting over to Qin Mu. He warns him that this artwork is extremely dangerous. Anyone who stares at it too long may suffer violent reactions, even madness or paralysis. Because of this, Uncle Lee instructs Kin Mu to keep the painting sealed and never open it casually. Uncle Ma then adds another piece of information. At present, Uncle Deaf has disappeared. He has gone off in search of Uncle Mute, as the two share a deep bond. Uncle Lee admits that he is worried since Uncle Mute vanished without warning.